Today is the big day. We've made it to the 2024 NFL Draft. We've been hyping this up since episode 1 of the series, and we are finally here. The last episode, I had my draft preview going over a lot of the prospects again, along with all the possible scenarios that we have with the number 2 pick. In case you missed that episode, I will leave a card at the top right of your screen for you to check out. So once we got the number 2 overall pick, I kind of knew that Puma Whitlock would be the number 1 pick, leading us to a tough decision whether we go with a defensive player, auto askew, or trade back. However, all of the mock drafts have Puma Whitlock not going number 1 overall, which completely opens the door for a lot of new possibilities. Before we get started, I want to show you guys how you can download this draft class in case you would like to use it. Since I'm on PlayStation 5, I imagine this only works for PS5 users, but what you're going to want to do is go into the draft class vault and type in Dragons Draft 1 in all caps. You can also search my PSN as well. You'll be able to find it and you'll be able to use it. I will say the one thing to note, EA's draft classes have been super buggy and glitchy this year. So if you go into the players, their faces are like not saved. So you might want to fix some of their faces. But other than that, the attributes and all that stuff are the exact same. So I recommend you use it because it's a really fun draft class. And I'm excited to see how you guys are able to progress all of these players in your franchises. So let's not waste any time and let's get started. The 2024 NFL Draft is on the clock and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are on the clock. The Bucs are in an interesting scenario because you assume Puma Whitlock makes the most sense for them. They don't have a quarterback and he's a really good prospect, but they reportedly like some of the defensive players on the board. This could also be a trade back scenario as well, so let's see what happens. With the first pick of the 2024 NFL Draft, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Solomone Samaro, the pass rusher out of Notre Dame. So the mock drafts did not lie to us. Samaro is the first pick to the Buccaneers despite the fact that they don't have a quarterback on their roster. This is a guy who the Buccaneers clearly think can transition their defense into one of the best in the NFL. There's a reason why they passed on Puma Whitlock and a trade back. They think that this kid is talented enough as a pass rusher to be the next great NFL defensive player. So Puma Whitlock is on the board for us with the second overall pick. And that now poses the question, do we like Puma Whitlock enough to be our franchise quarterback? And I think there's a lot of reasons for us to pick him here, but there's some clear concern about his weight. The Buccaneers did not pick him mainly for that reason. I also want to assess the trade market. With a premium asset such as Puma Whitlock on the board, I am expecting some massive trade offers here, and I was not disappointed. 7 or 8 teams offered us a package that included 3 first-round picks and then some. For a team like us who does not have a lot of talent, this could transform our team. I think the Giants and the Vikings offers are the most compelling. So now that poses the question, do we take one of these trades or do we stick and pick? After thinking about it for a while, I have decided that we will keep the selection and pick a player. With the second pick of the 2024 NFL Draft.
Only a matter of time, Cap.
Yeah, we're good.
I got a feeling you won't be waiting much longer.
Making moves over there?
Man, she called a shot.
Hey, coach.
The St. Louis Dragons select Puma Whitlock, quarterback out of the Ohio State University. So when it's all said and done, after all the hype and all the anticipation, Puma Whitlock will be the franchise quarterback of the St. Louis Dragons. This is a guy who I really think we can build our franchise around going forward as he comes in with hidden development. There's a lot to like with Puma Whitlock's game because he checks all the boxes. He is an athletic, dynamic player who knows how to make plays out of structure and under pressure. He's not Lamar Jackson or Justin Fields as a runner, but he's pretty damn good. This guy's athletic, he's quick, and he can make plays with the ball. He's got a really solid arm. He doesn't necessarily have elite arm strength, but he's a very poised quarterback who knows how to read a defense, and he's one of the most accurate quarterbacks to enter the NFL in quite a while. Of course, the best part about him is that he's a winner. 2-time national champion, 2-time college football playoff MVP, with the Buckeyes. He seemed like the surefire number 1 pick all year, but as we got to the combine, that changed because of questions about his weight. He's only 194 pounds despite being 6'5". We saw him test at the combine, and overall, we came away really impressed. He ran a 4.5 240 time, which I think is a really good time for him. I didn't know he had it in him, but clearly he did. In the rest of the drills, I was overall pretty impressed. I thought we saw a kid who was clearly well prepared, and obviously, again, he checks off all the boxes athletically. When we interviewed him, we were very impressed with the young man. This is a high-character football player, obviously a big-time leader, and somebody who we trust handing the keys to of our franchise. In the on-field drills, he looked awesome as a passer. He made pretty much every single throw. There was not one pass that he made that was not a good throw, and I think this shows that he's going to have the ability as an NFL passer to be really good. The only reason why that teams are skeptical of him, again, is his weight. He's one of the tallest quarterbacks in the league, but he's one of the skinniest. When asked about it at the Combine, he said that he plans on staying at 194 pounds because that's where he feels most comfortable is his playing weight. I think that concerned some teams, including the Buccaneers, clearly. Because of his skinniness, teams are worried that there's going to be durability question marks. As a 3-year starter with the Buckeyes, he has not missed a game, but it could become an issue down the line. Puma Whitlock is going to come in as a 77 overall. So is he a generational talent per se? Probably not, but he does look really darn good across the board. 88 speed, 85 excel, 90 throw power, good accuracies. There aren't any ratings of his that are bad, and because of that, I think he's going to be able to contribute right away, assuming he wins the starting quarterback job over Mitchell Trubisky. I'm really excited about having him as our franchise quarterback, and I get that we could have gotten a lot in a trade back, but the number one rule of NFL team building is if you have the opportunity to get a good quarterback, you don't pass up on that opportunity no matter what you can get in return, and we're not going to pass him up. Let's go forward now as Mustafa Nasir, the defensive tackle out of Oregon, is the 3rd overall pick to the Washington Commanders. The one strength of this Washington team is their defensive line, and now it's about to become even stronger. Nasir was one of the most dominant defensive players in college football last year, and he'll be sure to contribute right away for the Commanders. The Tennessee Titans select Otto Askew, the quarterback out of LSU. So Otto does go in the top 5. He ends up with the Titans. He's 6'5", 230 pounds. He's got the strongest arm in this draft. And of course, he led LSU to winning the national championship this past season. The Titans had a massive offseason, adding playmakers on both sides of the ball, including Amari Cooper and Hollywood Brown. I thought they were all in on Will Levis, but clearly that's not the case, and I expect to see Will Levis traded pretty soon. Roanzo Sanders is the 5th overall pick to the Seattle Seahawks, a talented player who needs to work on his consistency, but overall I think the Seahawks are going to be excited about adding him to the pass rush. He's a 77 overall, and I think he fits their scheme really well. I think Pete Carroll's going to be excited about having this guy on their defense, and we're going to play against him twice a year. With the 6th pick, the Chicago Bears select Ralph Cookins, the pass rusher out of Penn State. So unsurprisingly, we're seeing a lot of defense come off the board. Our 4th front 7 player has been selected. Cookins only has normal development, but he is a 76 overall, and I think the Bears feel good here about their first of 2 first-round selections. With the 7th pick, the New Orleans Saints select Wolfgang Simoneau, the offensive tackle out of Kentucky. Throughout the past 10 years, the Saints have consistently had one of the better offensive lines in the league, and they're going to keep it going with Simoneau, who has an 80 overall, is in fact the highest-rated offensive lineman in the class. This is a great pick by New Orleans. With the 8th pick, the Los Angeles Chargers select Joyce Mondo, the right tackle out of Georgia. The Chargers have really tried to get that right tackle spot solidified for a while, and now they've got their bookend tackles of the future with Rashawn Slater already on the left side. He's only a normal development, but I think he's going to be a solid starter. So with the 9th pick, the Colts are on the board. They're looking to trade down, and we're going to send them a call, but I don't think any of these offers make sense for us. So it'll be the Giants trading their 1st and 2nd round picks this year to move up to 9 to select Finn Heineman, the guard out of Maryland. In theory, I don't think this is a bad pick. Heineman is an awesome player, and he's going to be a day 1 starter off rip. The thing that I have an issue with here is I feel like the Giants could have gotten him at 15. I didn't think they needed to move up all the way here, but clearly they really wanted him, so I can understand it. And with the 10th pick, the Houston Texans will select Demir Stalin, the pass rusher out of Ohio State. Every pick in the top 10 has been either a quarterback, an offensive lineman, or a pass rusher. Teams are clearly focused on positional value. Stalin's going to come in as a 76 overall. I think he's probably going to slide inside in D'Amico Ryan's defense, try to be that DeForest Buckner or Eric Armstead. Sissy Verone Jr. out of Clemson is the top receiver off the board. He's very unpolished as a wide receiver, but the physical skills are absolutely there. 6'4", runs a 4.3. The problem is he's only a 69 overall. His hands are inconsistent, and he is a horrible route runner. He cannot separate, but he's big and he's fast, and the Steelers believe in the upside. So the Dolphins are on the clock at 12, and again, we want to move up. We're going to try to offer them 2 second-round picks. It's in the green, but we don't have any more we can give up. The Houston Texans will be moving up with their second first-round pick. The Dolphins do not have a lot of picks down the board, so they're trying to recoup a little bit, while the Texans are going to be trading up. They're going to stick with the defensive side of the ball as they select Jewel Chantel out of Alabama. The Alabama head coach, D'Amico Ryans, drafts an Alabama pass rusher to pair up with another Alabama pass rusher in Will Anderson. Jewel Chantel's going to have to play with his hand in the dirt, so ideally he's probably going to need to bulk up a little bit, but he was the best defensive player in college football last year. With the 13th pick, the New England Patriots select Chase Hunter, the wide receiver out of Missouri. I think Chase Hunter is the best receiver in this class. He may not be as big or as fast as a Sissy Verone, but he's a phenomenal route runner, he's a phenomenal separator, and he won the Biletnikoff Award for a reason. Hunter is the first of 3 players in this draft who are an 80 overall. When we were trying to trade up, this is the guy that we were trying to target. This guy is an unbelievable player, and he's going to be a wide receiver 1 immediately for the New England offense. With the 14th pick, the Green Bay Packers, with the first of their 2 first-round picks, select Micah Boston, the safety out of Washington. One of the fastest rising players in the draft, Boston is going to help shore up the back end of their secondary as a 76 overall. Boston has skyrocketed up draft boards, and I think he's going to make a positive impact here in Green Bay. The Packers got this pick from the Aaron Rodgers trade. Mohamedou Sow is the 15th pick to the Indianapolis Colts. They moved back from pick 9. They added a second-round pick. They now have 4 picks in the second round, and they get Mohamedou Sow, who only has normal development, but he is a 77 overall, and he's going to be a guy who I think is really going to help them go after the quarterback. Isim Cypress, linebacker out of North Carolina to the Chicago Bears. The Bears clearly believe in the value of the linebacker position. They gave Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards big contracts a couple years ago, and now they add Cypress, who is a little bit more raw than you'd hope for, but he is really athletic. Very similar to other highly drafted off-ball linebackers over the last few years who are freak athletes, but they lack the technique. Micaiah Speck out of Michigan is the first corner off the board. He's staying home, going to the Detroit Lions. I'm a little bit surprised that he was the first corner off the board, but I see why. He's got some of the best ball skills in the draft, and he's a pretty solid cover player, also pretty fast at 6 foot. With the 18th pick, we've got another trade, and it's not a particularly big one. It's the Minnesota Vikings moving up 1 spot. Teddy Bridgewater is currently their starting quarterback, so presumably that's the route they'll go with. Deontay Harris out of Florida is the new starting quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. Harris has been phenomenal over the last 2 years with the Gators. The problem is he kind of lacks that it factor in big games, and he has struggled when the lights are the brightest. He only has normal development, but he is the highest rated starting quarterback on the roster, and thus he will be in line to get the starting job. The Broncos select Noah Vandermeer, the pass rusher out of Houston. He's one of the youngest players in the draft at just 20 years old, and the Broncos were able to add an additional 4th-round pick while still getting their guy. He's a little bit raw, but I think with his age and his athletic ability, the upside is really good. With the 20th pick, the Miami Dolphins select Luke DiNardo, the offensive tackle out of LSU. DiNardo is the best pass protector in this class, but he's also a horrible run blocker. He'll be an interesting scheme fit with Mike McDaniels and the Dolphins, but if nothing else, he's going to be the blindside blocker for left-handed quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. So now that we've made it through 20 picks, I'd like to reassess where we're at We're nearing the back end of the first round. The Dragons currently have 2 players who are on their radar. If one of them gets picked, do the Dragons trade up? Let's find out. We're going to go a little bit faster now as the Falcons select DJ Orleans, the pass rusher out of TCU, 21st overall. The Atlanta Falcons have not had a good pass rush over the last few years, so they're going to try to shore it up here with the talented Orleans. Speaking of pass rushers, Javon Pittman out of Michigan is headed to the Green Bay Packers with the second of 2 Green Bay first-round selections. Unlike their previous pick, he's a little bit more raw, but he does have a development trait. Nirvana Agnew, finally off the board to the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's only a 70 overall. For much of the year, he was projected to go in the top 10. Clearly, he's a lot more raw than we expected, but there is some upside with him, but he's got a long ways to go. Otto De Los Santos out of Middle Tennessee State goes to the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens have done a good job of developing raw edge rushers. Now they're going to go with a different approach, grabbing a more pro-ready run stopper up the middle. The Los Angeles Rams, with the 25th pick, select Goomba Shalen, the defensive tackle out of Washington State. This is the Rams' first-round pick in 8 years. The last time they picked in the first round was Jared Goff. The Raiders select Isaiah Pompey out of Notre Dame, 3 consecutive selections of defensive tackles. I think we're going to see a run on interior defensive linemen here. We've already seen 3, and I don't think it's going to stop. With the 27th pick, the Eagles are trading down with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They'll be giving up pick 33 and a future third. This is ridiculous value for the Eagles. Howie Roseman stays being one step ahead of everybody. As for the Buccaneers, they select Deacon Adderley, quarterback out of Oklahoma. Wow, so the Buccaneers get their quarterback after all. Reportedly, the Buccaneers felt that Deacon Adderley was the best quarterback in the draft, hence why they passed on Puma Whitlock. Statistically, they're kind of onto something. In the 6 games that Deacon Adderley played this year, he was the Heisman frontrunner. 19 passing touchdowns and 0 interceptions. The problem is the kid can't stay healthy. In his 2 seasons as a starter with Oklahoma, he has not made it through a full season, which is a big deal. He tore his MCL 6 games into the year this season, and the medical is clearly an issue with him. However, the Bucs clearly really like him, and I'm a fan of him as well. If we did not end up with Puma Whitlock, I would have done the same thing. I would have tried to trade up and have the Dragons get Deacon Adderley. Obviously, it worked out because we got our guy, but if not, I think Deacon Adderley would have been a Dragon. The Cincinnati Bengals select Monty Bradley, the running back out of USC. So the top running back is off the board. Joe Mixon's coming off a really good season, but he is not getting any younger. And Monty Bradley is one of the best players in the draft. He is the second of 3 players who are an 80 overall. He is a dynamic weapon, and I think he's going to be the starter right away. Look for Joe Mixon to potentially be on the move. The Buffalo Bills, with the 29th pick, are going to select the second running back off the board, Jared Richardson out of Notre Dame. Richardson was statistically the most productive running back in the country this year, albeit he plays for a very run-friendly system at Notre Dame. But his and James Cook's skill sets are very different, and I think they'll complement each other really well. Sharif Sully, the offensive tackle out of Texas Tech, is finally off the board. He was projected to be the 7th overall pick. Maybe he didn't belong in the top 10, but he should not have fallen to 30. What a steal by the Dallas Cowboys. The San Francisco 49ers here at pick 31 select Diamond Richardson, defensive tackle out of Notre Dame. They whiffed on the Javon Kinlaw pick a few years back. They're hoping Richardson will be different. He's a solid run stopper, but he's got a lot of work to do. He is only 21 years old, though. And then with the final pick of the first round, the defending champion Kansas City Chiefs select Donovan McCullers Jr., the safety out of Florida. Remember when I said there were 2 players that I was targeting? Donovan McCullers Jr. was one of them. This is a super versatile and high IQ safety who I think is going to be a perfect fit inside the Kansas City Chiefs defense. He can play in the slot, he can play at outside corner, either safety spot, box linebacker, wherever you want him, he can do it. So that'll wrap up the first round. A very interesting start to our draft. The Buccaneers pass on Puma Whitlock for Solomane Samara with the number 1 pick, which leads Puma Whitlock to falling, and he's a St. Louis Dragon. We had 3 other QBs go in the first round, including Otto Askew, the 4th overall pick, to the Tennessee Titans, while the Vikings move up for Deontay Harris and the Buccaneers move up for Deacon Adderley. Now that we're out of the first round, we're going to move a lot quicker. We're not going to go over every pick because, well, we just don't have time for that. The Dragons had the 2nd pick in the 2nd round. The Eagles, who just moved back here, are the only team in front of us. As I mentioned, one of the two players I was targeting, Donovan McCullers Jr., just got picked. There's one more guy I really like, and he's by far the best player left on our draft board, and I would almost just rather not let the Eagles risk picking him. I'd be willing to move up one spot, and I want to see what it's going to cost. Well, in order to move up one spot, the Eagles want a third rounder. Howie, are you out your goddamn mind? If you think you're going to fleece us, it ain't working, buddy. I'm just going to take my chances and hope the Eagles don't pick the guy I want. Sure enough, they will select Squeezy Pryor-Escobar out of USC. He's not the guy we targeted, but this is a really fascinating pick. I think he's going to be an interesting fit in this offense as a wide receiver tight end hybrid. Squeezy Pryor-Escobar, of course, did not participate at the Combine. He had a late drug test that he failed, which led to him not doing it. He did participate at the USC Pro Day, and he did look quite good. So now we're on the board with the 34th pick. One of the guys I really like is still on the board, but I feel like we still have to do our due diligence and take a look at some of the possible trades here as well. Sure enough, we got offered some future first-round picks, and I was tempted by it, but the guy that we're going to draft here, I think, is going to be a total steal, and it won't even really be worth adding another first-round pick. So who's it going to be? We've already gotten the face of our offense with Puma Whitlock. Now we're going to try to get the face of our defense. With the 34th pick of the 2024 NFL Draft, the St. Louis Dragons select pass rusher Simeon Bonnet out of the University of Tennessee. This is a guy who I'm really excited about adding to the defense. Our leading pass rusher only had 4.5 sacks last year, and we're hopefully going to change that with the addition of Bonnet. He only has normal development, but I still think this kid's going to be really good. He's 6'6", 304 pounds, and for somebody his size, he is a total freak. He ran a 4.6 at the Combine. He tested well in the agility and jumping drills. Players who are 50 pounds lighter than him are usually not as athletic. The fact that he can do what he does at 300 pounds is absurdly ridiculous. Along with that, he's got a good array of pass rush moves. He had 8.5 sacks this past season at Tennessee against SEC offensive tackles, and I think he's going to be one of the best players on our defense right away. Now, even though he has normal development, I have some good news. He's an 80 overall. He's the third and final player in the class who is an 80. So even though he only has normal development, he's a goddamn stud, and he's only 21 years old. I really feel like Puma Whitlock and Simeon Bonnet can be the two players who we build around for the future. So let's go a little bit faster now. The Washington Commanders select Babacar Diassi, the offensive tackle. Savion Mingo to the Titans. He's really risen up boards. Lance Sturlovich Jr., another pass rusher to Seattle. I like that pick. They're trying to get some more pass rush. Arama Swearinger to the Bears. Does this mean Eddie Jackson's out the door? Elijah Mbassa to the Eagles. He's a Georgia pass rusher. We know they love their Georgia defensive players, so this pick really should not be much of a surprise. The Chargers get Poco Formaggio, the tight end out of Boston College. The Colts get Sergio Jimenez with their first of 4 second-rounders. And then Martin Llewellyn, the guard out of Oregon, to the Houston Texans. And then the Steelers get Victor Ridgewood II out of Florida, the safety. So that'll bring up the Colts, who have 3 of the next 4 picks, and they already just used one of their second-round picks. Well, they're going to cash in on some of these picks and try to make their roster better. They'll be trading the 44th pick to the Washington Commanders for wide receiver Jahan Dotson. Dotson's a really good player. He's going to be a nice addition to their offense, and then they're going to trade the 47th pick to the Jets for Elijah Vera Tucker, adding some offensive line help. So the Commanders get Kareem Shaheed, who's a very similar player to Jahan Dotson. They're basically restarting the rookie contract clock. And then the Colts get Dontavius Brown with the pick that they still have. Dontavius Brown's a really, really good running back, 79 overall. Jonathan Taylor obviously is out the door. He was traded to the Dolphins last year, and now they get his replacement in Brown, who leads the NCAA all-time in rushing yards. The Colts have been terrorized by Derrick Henry for a decade, so now they're going to get their own baby Derrick Henry. Jaguars and Texans fans look away. So the Jets are on the clock. They have not picked anybody yet today because they traded their first-round pick for Aaron Rodgers, but they had the next 2 picks in the second round. Now, they don't have a quarterback. You know who's available? Will Levis. He's going to be the starting quarterback of the New York Jets. They'll be trading away pick 47, which is their second of 2 second-rounders, to the Tennessee Titans. in exchange for Levis. Now, he'll compete with Sam Darnold for the starting job, but you got to assume that's Will Levis's spot to lose. The Jets are still on the clock with the other second-round pick they own, and they will select Kenya Catch, cornerback out of Ohio State. He's a perfect fit into this defense. 78 overall, one of the highest-rated defensive players in the entire class. I think he's going to be a really good fit in the slot. They've already got one of the best cornerback duos in the league with Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. Now they're going to add a great nickel corner. The Tennessee Titans select Isaiah Thomas, the wide receiver out of SMU. No player has seen their stock rise faster than Isaiah Thomas, who had 2,000 receiving yards this year, and he ran a 4.3 at 6'3", 225 pounds. That, kids, is how you turn yourself from a 6th rounder into a 2nd rounder. Jameer Woods goes to the Carolina Panthers, and then the Lions will be trading their 2nd and 3rd to the Washington Commanders for Chase Young and a 4th. Chase Young has not been the player that Washington had hoped. He's had a hard time staying healthy. Last year, he only had 3.5 sacks. The Commanders are cleaning up the mess from their previous regime. They just traded away Jahan Dotson. Now they trade Chase Young, and they'll get his replacement with Tony Adichie. Sickle Stalin goes to the New Orleans Saints, the pass rusher out of Ohio State. Running back Drayshawn Sanders ends up in Minnesota. The Browns with their first pick at C.J. Cotter, the linebacker from the University of Florida. Atlanta gets Trust Adams, the center from Duke. Walter Flemington to the Packers. Miko Asekola to the Jaguars. And then DeAndre Johnson goes to the Baltimore Ravens. This is a great pick here by Baltimore, a guy who was on our radar. He's one of the smartest players in the draft. He's a phenomenal nickel corner. I've compared him to Brian Branch because he can play safety, but I think he's best as a nickel corner. And like Brian Branch, he got overlooked because he ran a slow 40. But other than that, he's really good. Trace Keens to the Rams, and then Juice Watkins to the Raiders. Him and Josh Jacobs are going to be a really interesting pairing together. They have very different skill sets, and I think they're going to complement each other really well. That's a fun pick. The Eagles get Newton Burke, another running back out of Iowa State. The Bengals get Bugsy Briggs. Giuseppe Macias to the Bills. That's a good pick. Noah Saleh to the Cowboys. Cooper Wenzel to the Titans. And Roman Bingle to the Kansas City Chiefs. So that'll wrap up the second round. The Dragons stay put, and they draft the talented pass rusher out of Tennessee, Simeon Bonnet. That'll bring us into the third round. Again, the Dragons had the second pick in the round, so we're about to be up. The Buccaneers are the only team in front of us, and here's a look at the board at where everything stands. Bebe McFarland was supposed to go in the top 15. He is still here. There are some other surprises, such as TJ Hyler and Derek Justice, two players who I thought would be off the board right now. Two very different corners who have both fallen. Colin Robinson, the wide receiver, is another guy I expected to still have been picked, and he is not. So the Buccaneers, with the top pick in the third round, select Cortez Navarro, the safety out of UCLA. That'll bring up the Dragons here, and there isn't really an obvious pick for us. If we can trade back, I would certainly like to. The Eagles are just going to offer us a pick later, because that's just what Howie Roseman does. So I don't really like any of these deals, but I do still really want to move back. So I'm going to make up my own trade, and we're going to have the Denver Broncos call us up on the phone. We're going to move down 5 spots and add a 5th round pick, 146, from Denver. They say no, but they almost accept it. We're going to try something similar with the Steelers. They say no. I'm going to go back to the Broncos and bite the bullet, swap a 6 for a 7. They still say no, but it's so close. What am I supposed to do here? So I'm going to try to add stuff, but like the Broncos are being really stingy. Finally, we would get something to go. I'm going to trade for a pick later in the 5th round rather than the one I had initially wanted. So the Broncos get Fadiala Cisse, the running back out of Kentucky. That's a nice pick. Odorion Michel to the Commanders. They've had a very busy draft. JT Robinson goes to the Eagles. Seattle gets tight end Houston Maverick, their Will Dissly replacement. And then the Steelers get Bebe McFarland, 1 pick before us. So there's a reason why McFarland fell. He's a 65 overall. He does have hidden dev, but clearly he looks to be a bust, and scouts knew that. They did a good job of letting him fall. So we are back on the clock. We just got this pick from the Broncos. I think I know what player I would choose here. I wanted to look at the trades. Nothing really caught my eye. I think we're going to stick and pick. So with the 7th pick of the 3rd round of the 2024 NFL Draft, the St. Louis Dragons select Griffin Weaver III, wide receiver out of TCU. So we're going to add some skill position players to the offense with Griffin Weaver, a talented wide receiver from TCU. He'll be catching passes now from Puma Whitlock, and he's going to come in with hidden development. Griffin Weaver III is an interesting player. He was a 5-star recruit out of high school, originally committed to the University of Alabama, transferred to TCU, where he's been a consistent starter for them over the last 3 years. Weaver's got pretty good size and athleticism. He's 6'1", 205 pounds. He ran just under 4.4 at the combine, and I think he's at his best with the ball in his hands. He's a really good player after the catch, and if you can scheme up ways for him to get the football, I think that's how he's most effective. I will say, though, he's not a particularly good route runner. He needs to improve as a separator. He does have good hands, though, but even so, I think he's going to be best out of the slot as someone who just runs short, simple routes, or as a gadget player who just has creative ways to get the ball in his hands. He's got some work to do, but with hidden development, I think there's no reason why he can't potentially reach his ceiling. He'll come in as a 75 overall, and I think he'll really be able to challenge for that wide receiver 3 battle with guys like Greg Dortch and Denzel Mims. The route running is not good, but the speed and acceleration are. He's got really good hands, some of the best on our team, and I think he's going to be a positive addition to the offense. So now these two corners, TJ Hyler and Derek Justice, are still here. I thought about both of them. TJ Hyler is a freak athlete, but he's raw. Derek Justice is the total opposite. Super productive, but he's not really an NFL-level athlete. So let's continue to make our way here through the 3rd round. Staten Humphries to the Dolphins is a pretty good pick. Ontario Jackson, running back out of Alabama, to the Steelers. Why not have 2 inefficient Alabama power backs instead of 1? Jonathan Kingston, the tackle out of Arkansas, to the Dolphins. That's a great pick. We've been hyping up for a while. I think he's going to be a great player, especially being paired up with Christian Wilkins. Taco Prince to the Giants. That's a pretty good pick. Connor Hesketh to the Lions. I think he's a good fit with their defense. Suleiman Jane to the Commanders. And then Kermit Wiltz goes to the Browns. The number 1 receiver out of Ohio State stays in the state of Ohio. This was Puma Whitlock's top target with the Buckeyes. He ends up in Cleveland. Colin Robinson finally off the board to the Atlanta Falcons. I think he's actually a really good fit in that offense. I think that's a good landing spot for him. Let's wrap up the rest of the 3rd round now. Here's TJ Hyler finally off the board. We'll get to see him twice a year as he's an LA Ram. He really should not have slipped this far. I get he's a little bit raw in coverage, but there's some real upside with him. 6'3", unbelievable athlete, really long arms. Maybe we'll regret it, and if we do, we'll see him twice a year. Dynamite Williams is off the board of the Cowboys. That's a really fun pick. The Cowboys have had a quietly really good draft with Sheriff Sully in the 1st round, now Dynamite Williams. This is a player who was really on our radar, but with drafting Griffin Weaver, we weren't really going to pick him because he's a similar player. He's best as a gadget guy. He can't really run routes, but he is a weapon with the ball in his hands. The Niners get Yami Ooster-Swan, the other wide receiver out of Ohio State, a 1-year transfer with the Buckeyes, and then Nick Sutton goes to the Chiefs. So that'll wrap up the 3rd round. We move back a little. We add some day 3 picks, and we draft Griffin Weaver III, the wide receiver out of TCU. So that'll bring us into the 4th round now, into day 3, and this is where we're really going to make our money. Of the 10 picks we own, 7 of them are here on day 3 of the draft. We've got a 4th, 3 5s, a 6, and 2 7s. So what does the draft board look like as of now? And we are 2nd on the clock, so we've got to figure this out. Derek Justice, the corner out of LSU, is surprisingly still on the board amongst others. Could we potentially look at picking Derek Justice here and stopping his fall? Well, there's only one team ahead of us, the Bucs, and sure enough, they picked Derek Justice. This is unfortunate because I was going to pick Justice with our next pick, but the Buccaneers pick snipers. Now, he's not the most fast guy in the world, especially at 5'9", but he's one of the best cover corners in the draft, and he's got great ball skills. He's a bad athlete for NFL standards, but he's a really good football player. So now we're on the board with the 2nd pick of the 4th round. The guy I was going to pick was just selected right in front of us. So now I think we're going to have to pivot and look for a trade because there's nobody else who I really want to pick here. So after looking at some of the trades in the Trade Finder, I decided to make my own here. I wanted to try to add possibly a 5th round pick while moving down in the 4th. And ultimately, I was able to agree to a deal with Atlanta. We're going to move to the end of the 4th round, but we're going to turn a 7 into a 5th. We now have the 21st pick in the 4th round as Atlanta trades up for offensive tackle Jeremy Adams. Let's go forward now as Bryson Bowen, the quarterback out of Memphis, goes to Seattle, and he looks pretty good. 70 overall with hidden development. He's got some good physical traits. He's got a strong arm, pretty accurate, and he's pretty fast as well. This could be the potential replacement for Geno Smith, and he's in our division. Great pick. by the Seahawks. Dakari Stanton's a good pick to the Jags. Drake Strolovich to the Chargers. I think he's a pretty good player. We're around 10 picks away from our selection. There's Reed Earthenberger, the center out of Indiana. He was the top player on our board. He's only a 68, but he does have hidden development, so I feel like we kind of missed out there. He goes to the Broncos. Bryson McDaniels, the defensive tackle, good pick by Carolina. Norton St. Matthews, the guard out of Indiana. He was the next guy on our board. Now the Bears are on the clock, but they'll be trading away Eddie Jackson to the Philadelphia Eagles, as if the Eagles need more talent, I guess. The Bears drafted Aramis Swearinger in the second round as the replacement for Eddie Jackson, and with the pick, they select Tegan Yeager, the quarterback out of TCU. Interesting pick here. I think Yeager's got all the talent. Another guy who's had a hard time staying on the field with injuries. I don't know why I gave him a 90 injury. That feels really high. He just hasn't really been able to put it all together, but I think he's got some NFL traits, and he could be a good player for Chicago as they try to figure out the future of Justin Fields. So we are now on the clock with the 21st pick in the 4th round. Some of the guys that I kind of liked, such as the 2 Indiana offensive linemen, are both off the board. I think we're going to look to make another trade here potentially. We've got all these day 3 picks. I don't think we need to move down again. We have like 4 picks in the 5th round. So rather what we're going to do is we're going to restructure some contracts around because we need to clear up cap space because we're trading for a player. Just because we're a bad team doesn't mean we can't try to add guys who are going to help our football team. And watching the Bengals draft a running back in the 1st round makes it clear to me that Joe Mixon would be available for trade. I think he'd be a really good fit here. Joe Mixon's not getting any younger. He's 28 years old, but he's still really good. He's coming off the best year of his career, 5 yards a carry, 18 touchdowns last year, but clearly the Bengals don't really value him all that much. Last year, when they got to protect 20 players, Joe Mixon was not on their list. Now, that was when it looked like he was regressing, and he had some off-field issues, both of which have been cleaned up, but they just drafted a running back in the 1st round. They don't need him anymore. So we're going to trade for Joe Mixon with the 117th pick. Joe Mixon's the highest-rated player on our roster, and I think he's going to be a really good addition to the offense. A very quiet loss that we had was Deontay Foreman. I thought he was a pretty impactful player, and he's not back on our team. The only really good running backs we have are DeAndre Swift and Sean Tucker. We need somebody who can be the early down runner, and that's what Joe Mixon can be. I think within our offense with a rookie quarterback, we're going to need a stable run game for Puma Whitlock to lean on. Why not get one of the better veteran running backs in the NFL in Joe Mixon? Now, you got to keep in mind he's not getting any younger. He's 28 years old, then he's on the last year of his contract, hence why the Bengals were willing to move on from him. But I think he's still a pretty good player, and I think this will be a great addition to the offense. So it looks like we will make it through the 4th round without picking anybody. The Bengals used this selection on Riley Reese, a guard out of TCU. Darwin Juskins, the running back out of Washington, the Packers. I like him a lot, but with the addition of Joe Mixon, we don't really need him. Moses Azevedo, the quarterback from Georgia, goes to the Ravens, and then DeAndre Washington goes to the Rams, who've had a really good draft themselves. Washington's a really weird player because he was used as a gadget guy, but he's like 6'3". Despite that, he doesn't have great speed. He's not a great route runner, but he just knows how to make it work with the ball in his hands. The Bengals have another 4th rounder. They go with linebacker Raheem Nectar. Just a couple more picks left. Laverne Stun to the 49ers, and then the Chiefs get McCaldy Ibrahim, the running back out of Virginia. So the Dragons enter the 4th round with 1 pick, which we trade back with, and then we use that to go and get Joe Mixon, who's going to be our starting running back next year. Now we go in the 5th round, and this is where the Dragons are going to be busy. We've got 4 picks in the 5th round, so this is really where we're going to be making our money. We've only drafted 3 players so far, but by the time we get to the end of this round, we will likely more than double that. That includes the 2nd pick in the round, along with picks from the Jets, the Panthers, and the Falcons. So the Eagles get Yakuba Salikiba, the linebacker from Oklahoma, and that'll bring us on the board with the 2nd pick in the 5th round. Who's it going to be? With the 2nd pick in round 5 of the 2024 NFL Draft, the St. Louis Dragons select Raekwon Tarpley, offensive tackle out of Penn State. It's no secret this team needs offensive line, and we're going to be adding to the line with Tarpley, who only has normal development. I think he's a pretty intriguing player. Coming in at 6'6", weighing 328 pounds. He's got the size and length for it. I think he's a pretty good athlete. He just needs to work on his overall technique. And I think as a backup for us developing, he could potentially become a starter down the line. He's only 21 years old, so he's got time. And I think he could be a pretty solid tackle for us in the future. Now, unfortunately, he's only a 65 overall. I think he's the lowest player who's been drafted so far in the entirety of the draft class. His base ratings are pretty terrible, so maybe we overestimated him a little bit, but I do think he's got good size and he's young, so maybe we've got something there. We're only about 10 picks away now, so we don't have to wait too long into our next pick. Some notable selections here include Gabriel Jimenez, safety out of USC, to the Seahawks, Alani Anderson to the Colts, Platinum and Cephas to the Houston Texans, and then New England, one pick ahead of us, selects Demetric Armstrong, the 6'10" offensive tackle out of Georgia. So with the 14th pick in the 5th round of the 2024 NFL Draft, the St. Louis Dragons select Trajan Bleichenden, a pass rusher out of NC State. We've only drafted one defensive player so far, but now we're going to add Bleichenden, who I think gives us good explosiveness off the edge. And he's going to come in with hidden development. 6'7", 254 pounds. He's a very tall player, and he's got great bend and quickness and get off coming off the edge. I think he's got a little bit of work to do overall as a pass rusher, but I think the fact that he's got hidden development means that there's some real upside with him. I think the plan with Trajan Bleichenden is that he's going to start as a rotational pass rusher, but I think he's got the upside to potentially be a starter and eventually be a regular snap-to-snap player on the other side of Simeon Bonnet. So Bleichenden going to come in as a 69 overall. Nice. And along with having hidden development, I feel like this is a really good pick for the 5th round. He's got to improve as a pass rusher, and he's really not good as a run stopper, but he's got the size, length, and athleticism to be really good. So after Bleichenden, the Giants are on the clock. They go with Junior Widemer. And then the Dragons are right back up, our 3rd pick of the 5th round. With the 16th pick in the 5th round of the 2024 NFL Draft, the St. Louis Dragons select Tykeem Keon Jr., wide receiver out of Clemson. We know his dad very well on this channel. In our Madden 22 franchise with the Philadelphia Eagles, we selected him 12th overall in our very first draft. And well, I think it's safe to say he ended up becoming a pretty good player with the team. Tykeem Keon was an awesome wide receiver in that series. He had an unbelievable season where he caught 151 passes for 2,230 yards and 28 touchdowns. By far the greatest season for a wide receiver I've ever seen. All 3 of those marks are records. He was an outstanding player with the Eagles. He was a Hall of Famer. And now it's time to see what his son can do. His son is even faster. He ran a 4.27 at the Combine, one of the fastest times, period. But the problem with Tykeem Keon Jr. is that he's just not all that good of a receiver, hence why he was a 5th rounder compared to his dad being a 1st rounder. Despite that, I do see the upside with Tykeem Keon. He was the wide receiver, too, in a very bad passing Clemson offense. The quarterback play at Clemson was very bad. The play calling was very bad from head coach Malachi Madison, who, of course, was Tykeem Keon Sr.'s quarterback, not just with the Eagles, but also at the University of Texas. Tykeem Keon Jr. was a 5-star recruit. He was going to transform the Clemson offense, and that just never happened. He does not have good hands, but the guy is explosive when he gets the ball in his hands, and I think there's some real upside with him, and he's going to come in as a 74 overall. Now, much of this is because his physical attributes are ridiculous, and the rest of his attributes need a lot of work. He's not a great separator. He's got bad hands. He's not a horrible route runner, though. He's better at running routes than Griffin Weaver is. He's also 2 years younger than Weaver, although he does not have a dev trait. So we're still only a few picks away. Once again, our 4th and final pick of the 5th round. So who will we be selecting now with our final pick of the round? With the 21st pick in round 5 of the 2024 NFL Draft, the St. Louis Dragons select DeMar Diggins, cornerback out of Oklahoma. So we're going to go back to defense there, our 3rd defensive selection. Our first 2 were on the defensive line, and now we're going to add to the secondary with DeMar Diggins, who I think is a pretty intriguing all-around defensive back. He only comes in with normal development, but I still like his skill set. I think he's best as a slot corner, and he's got a really good ability to make plays in the backfield. He's a really good tackle. He's a very willing run defender, which I think is a big deal if you're going to play nickel corner. He's a little bit inconsistent in coverage, but he's not horrible in that area, and he's got all-around pretty solid ball skills. I think he's got the size and length to play on the outside. It's just that Oklahoma really only used him in the slot, but I think we're potentially going to use him in a variety of different ways. He's going to come in as a 71 overall, which for a 5th round pick really is not bad at all. He's going to challenge guys like Greedy Williams and Kobe Bryant as cornerback depth on our roster. So we're going to simulate a little bit forward here. Wrapping up the 5th round, we've drafted 4 players here in round 5, but let's get one more. So there's only one more guy I really like in this draft. So we're going to trade our final 2 picks in the 6th and 7th round to move up with the Las Vegas Raiders. With the 26th pick in the 5th round of the 2024 NFL Draft, the St. Louis Dragons select Dewan Overton, defensive tackle out of Auburn. He's projected to potentially not even get drafted, but he's really the only guy who I really like left on the board, and I didn't feel it was worth risking him getting picked. I think Overton's going to be a guy who's able to contribute right away. He doesn't give you a ton of juice as a pass rusher. He's not as especially explosive off the line, but I think he's going to be a really solid run defender at the next level who has shown an ability to be an okay pass rusher. He had 3.5 sacks this past year with Auburn, but I think he's going to be best as an early down interior defensive lineman. Now, he's going to come in as a 74 overall, which I get feels really high. I wouldn't get too excited because I don't think the upside with him is all that crazy, but it looks like the guy can play, and for a 5th round pick, that's really all you can ask for. So finally, we are done here in the 5th round after selecting 5 different players. Onyx St. James, the quarterback of Texas, is off the board of the Chiefs. That's a rather fascinating pick as we recap round 5, where our St. Louis Dragons added 5 players. Raekwon Tarpley, the tackle out of Penn State. Then we went back to defense with Trajan Bligenden. Then we got Tykeem Keon Jr., then DeMore Diggins, and then Dewan Overton. So with us using 5 5th-round picks, we don't have any more selections here in the rest of the draft, and we've got all of our picks in the future, but we don't have any other picks left. Now, if there's a player who we kind of want, we'll move up for him, but there isn't really anybody who I'm overly focused on getting. So what we're going to do is we're going to skip through the 6th and 7th rounds. We don't really need to go in depth because we don't have any picks and there isn't anybody super notable left on the board. So let's take a look at the results here of round 6. Got some pretty solid players down the board. Overall, it is an overall fairly deep draft class. I wanted to have talent throughout the entire class. And then going into the 7th round, I did actually decide to make a move and get one more pick. We're going to trade running back Pierre Strong Jr. to the Texans for the 9th pick in the 7th round, pick 201 overall. We don't really need Strong. I'd rather pick a rookie here. So with the 9th pick of the 7th round in the 2024 NFL Draft, the St. Louis Dragons select Mamadou Diaby, a pass rusher out of Florida Atlantic. I think at 21 years old, Diaby's got a solid toolbox of pass rushing moves already. And for the 7th round, why not? I think he's more likely to make the roster than Pierre Strong would have as like our 4th or 5th running back. Diaby's a talented player with the Florida Atlantic Owls. He had 7 sacks this past year as a junior. He's an improving run defender. And I think for round 7, this could end up being really good value, especially with him being one of the younger players in the draft. He's not an overly impressive athlete, though, especially compared to the other edge rushers we drafted. And because of that, I don't think he's ever going to be a full-time player. But as a 67 overall, I think he's quite solid. We're probably going to move him inside to defensive tackle because he's 330 pounds, and he is quite strong. 90 strength is pretty good. So I think we're going to have him inside, and he'll compete with Dewan Overton to potentially make the roster. So that'll wrap up the 7th round with Diaby being our final selection. Mr. Irrelevant, for what it's worth, ended up being safety Romano Modelo, who was drafted by the Houston Texans. The pick before him, Kyon Clark to San Francisco, I think is an interesting one. He was the #1 recruit in his high school class. Didn't really pan out in college, but who knows, maybe with Kyle Shanahan, things are different. So with the draft now in the books, I want to take a look at a few teams in particular who I thought had interesting drafts. We'll start with the Titans, who got Otto Askew. They got really good value. I think this team's going to be a real threat in the AFC. The Eagles made some good trades, and they got value up and down the board. The Washington Commanders traded away guys like Jahan Dotson and Chase Young. They're going all in on their new young guys, headlined by Mustafa Nasir. The Colts, I thought, did quite well with their picks, along with adding Elijah Vera Tucker and Jahan Dotson. I think the Buccaneers made a mistake by not picking Puma Whitlock, but I think having Solomani Samaro and Deacon Adderley is not a bad consolation prize. Overall, though, I think the biggest winners at the draft, in my biased opinion, have to be the St. Louis Dragons. We got a franchise quarterback with Puma Whitlock. We got a stud pass rusher in Simeon Bonnet. And I think overall, the rest of their draft ended up being pretty solid. Overall, I think we had a very positive offseason, and I'm really excited to get started with this team in the next episode. Our season opener will be on the road against the Chargers. Our home opener will be against the Lions in Week 2. We actually have primetime games as well this year. Week 6 Thursday night against the Packers, and then Week 14 Thursday night against the Dolphins. The game I'm really curious about is Week 11 against the Bucs, who passed on Puma Whitlock for Deacon Adderley. So that'll wrap up the episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new. Peace out.